Welcome to DevConf. Please welcome your 2018 hosts, Robert and Candice.
We do. Welcome to DevConf 2018. We're here. It's our third time. I never thought we'd be in Boksburg, though. I have to admit that was a surprise. But we're absolutely thrilled to be here. If you don't know us, my name is Candice. This is Robert. Robert actually lives in Cape Town, and he's been here for a few days. And I don't know if you follow him on Instagram, if you've seen the shower selfies. I think he showered twice this morning. He's become quite obsessed. But Robert, you know you have to go back to Cape Town in 2 days because we're running DevConf Cape Town for the first time. And yeah, how awesome is that? And the only reason that is possible is because of all of you that support this conference. So please give yourselves a big round of applause.
Today is, we are really honored to have speakers from all over the world. We have speakers from every continent except Antarctica, which we will solve next year by getting a speaker from Antarctica if you know one, or by removing Antarctica from the Earth. We have 7 sessions across 5 different rooms today, as well as plenty of food and drinks. And to avoid the horrendous Joburg traffic, we have a great networking session at the end of the day. So please join us for that. Have a drink, meet the speakers, meet the sponsors. We have had a few changes to the printed agenda that you'll find in your attendee bag. Michael can't be with us, unfortunately, today. In his place, Young will be talking about how to grow beyond just the next popular dev stack, which I assume means how to survive the fact there's a new JavaScript framework coming out now, and now, and now, and now. And Arjun's talk's title has changed slightly. It is, your job is not to write code, which I can only assume means, as a senior developer, your job is to write email. We are honored to be hosted by Birchwood today. Obviously, we are in the big OR Tambo room. We'll be having sessions in here today. Our food and drinks, as well as our sponsors, will all be taking place in the Serengeti Lapa, which, following the airport theme, you can find by going outside. I can't do a mic and a hands at the same time. And then our other rooms are available on either side of the courtyard. We have our domestic room, which is out, which has King Sharker and the only Cape Town with water. And we also have our international building, which is out, which has the auditorium and Marco.
Polo. I can't see what's next here. We've lost our slides in front of us. This is really important, everybody. We have a code of conduct. This conference is an harassment-free conference. If at any point today something or someone has made you feel uncomfortable, please reach out to any of us wearing these colored shirts. That's the speakers, Robert and I, and any of the organizers.
DevConf wouldn't be possible without the support of many great sponsors. We'd like to just take a moment to thank the sponsors that have helped make this day possible. So starting with BBD, who is our cocktail event sponsor, then our platinum event sponsors, DVT, EOH, and Microsoft. Our gold sponsors representing Durban, Derivco, and Chilisoft. Our silver sponsors, Amazon Web Services, OfferZen, Quest, and Red Hat. Our bronze sponsors, Alan Gray, Blue Turtle in collaboration with Redgate, Microfocus, MMI Holdings, and WiseTech Global. Our specialist coffee sponsor, which you can find the specialist coffee in the LARPA area, that is sponsored by DVT. And we're really honored for another first this year to have a video sponsor in Obsidian. They've made it possible for us to video record every single session today, and we'll be able to put those online after the event. You'll be able to find them on YouTube. And then lastly, our media partners, HTXT Africa and IT Online. Please give all our sponsors a big hand for today.
As you know, this conference would not be possible without the wonderful speakers. They really value your input and your feedback, so please go to our website, /rate, to give the feedback to the speakers that you've seen today. And for that, you can win a prize. It's a DJI drone. I believe it's quite clever. It's got a camera fitted, and if you make like a sign, then it will take a photo all by itself. So I know you want that, so please rate the speakers. There's another opportunity to win a prize today. These beautifully handmade copper laptop stands. They've been sponsored by L&B Designs. We have 3 of them, am I correct? We have 3 to give away, so please tweet your favorite programmer joke to #DevConf and you can win one. And also, Microsoft has sponsored some books. It looks like this. This book, I believe, is really interesting, called Hit Refresh. It's a transformation journey written by the CEO of Microsoft. There are a number of them to give out. Marco is actually going to give one out after his talk, and some of our other speakers will be giving them out at the end of their talk. So ask intriguing questions and you might win this book.
Another first for us this year is we have an app available on iOS and Android. This app was built by a team of graduates from DVT with support from Rebecca Frank, who's one of our speakers. Can I ask Rebecca and any of the people who worked on this, please stand and we can give you a round of applause for making this possible today.
So we're very privileged to have Marco here today. Marco Heimeshoff from Germany has graciously offered to keynote at fairly short notice. Some of you know that the keynote that we had booked has had some unfortunate news and couldn't be here today. So we are just thrilled to have Marco here. He's a domain-driven design enthusiast. He actually started the DDD community in Germany, and he also is very good at salsa. Welcome, and thank you, Marco.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning. I will not dance today on stage, so you have to do with all the talking. I want to talk to you about why software development is not about software. So, a few things about me. I don't like these slides that are self-grandiorizing, so I'll make it quick. I love developing business software beyond reason. I have a very unhealthy relationship, so I did my own conference in Berlin, Domaindriven Design Conference. I'm flying around the world, even to South Africa, just to give a talk about a topic, and then I fly back home. So I totally love talking about business software, and if throughout these days you want to talk to me, just come up and we have a chat about it. So, software is everywhere. Software is actually everywhere in the world. It's in our homes. It's controlling how we deal with our lights and setting times. It's in our cars, the braking assistance systems in older cars and even completely automated cars that can drive on their own in the near future. And it's in small businesses. No business today can survive without software. So in the smallest businesses, there's a financial system, and you have your money and your production, and everything is organized by software products. So we actually shape the whole world. We as developers play a major role in everything that's happening, from politics to science to businesses to private life. Our role is major, but it's hidden. So we better do a good job. Otherwise, it's not hidden anymore, and then you have all those nice news in the TV. So software is even in the most complex systems of connecting the whole world, connecting communication between people, and connecting businesses with humans and their customers. And when we start building software, software becomes what we understood from the requirements. It's not what the business people intended, it's what we understood. So we better understand them right. Our most important ability is not to write code. It's something that we should better do well, but it's not the most important ability. Our most important ability is communication, empathy, and the ability to learn. We need to be able to talk to business people. I don't want to have a business analyst in front of me that tells me how I can write code. We developers are not people who sit in a basement, who get pizza and coffee and they crank out some programs. We really need to understand the business that we're trying to solve, and we need to get with skin in the game. We need to talk to those people and understand them. And for that, you need empathy. You need to understand their true needs. Business people always tell you what they want by giving you a solution. I need a new grid here, a table, a button to click. But they very rarely express their real problem, so you can help them analyze a problem and build a better solution than they already came up with. And the ability to learn in all things. You need to learn about the business, but you also need to learn about better ways of building software, which is why you're all here at the conference, I guess. So what we want to do is, we want to structure our companies aligned with the business needs of our customers. Meaning that if I have multiple development teams, I do not build a dev team and a UI team and a database team. I build a team for shopping carts, and I build a team for finance. Welcome. And I build a team for all the different contexts at the customer, because I need to align my development power with the needs of the customer to be able to deliver good solutions. So this is a saying by Melvin Conway. He's still alive, and you can meet him at various conferences around the world. He's a very, very smart guy and interesting to talk to. He said, when you build a complex system, your communication structure determines how the complex system looks like. If you have a big hierarchy in your company, you will not build a distributed system with a lot of negotiation power. And if you are a distributed team, like all the Linux developers all around the world, you will not build a centralized server and middle management servers and clients. So if you get your communication structure aligned with the needs of the business, the solution you will build will also be aligned with the needs of the business. Discovering bounded context. Bounded context is an expression, a term from the domain-driven design world. And bounded context means you have a semantic barrier, an area where words have a very specific meaning. Like, if your customer is an online retailer, online shopping center, there are a few important examples out there. Let's say you're Amazon, and you have a shopping cart, and this is kind of like the most important thing that you work with. But you also need to build your own warehouse, and you need software for all of that. But the shopping cart is what distinguishes you from the rest of the world. This is where you gain the most value. This is where you actually shine. Warehousing is something that needs to work, but it's not that important. So your core domain is shopping cart, which means you need to find the boundaries that enable you to focus on your core. Bounded contexts do not come up just by themselves. You can't ask a business, hey, what's your different context that you work in? There are so many ways to structure your company, and you need actually to design that. And language barrier is one thing. In every bounded context, words have a specific meaning. A customer in the shopping cart is something else than a customer in the warehouse or a customer in delivery. In shopping cart, a customer is someone who has special interests, who also needs to buy other stuff, and in delivery, a customer is just an address that I need to deliver stuff to. So I wouldn't want to build my type system not aligned with those ideas. I want to align it. So now we figured out shopping cart is our most important core domain. We really want to excel there. We want to put all our brain power in there. But warehouse is a very specific solution. We can't buy that. We build our own warehouse software. So we have two teams, and we distribute them through both bounded contexts. But the shopping cart system is upstream, meaning they own the model. They own the model of the interaction. When shopping cart team decides to change anything in the shopping cart model, warehouse just has to accept it, because shopping cart is more important. When the warehouse says, oh, we're going to change our interface, then shopping cart says, no, we're not ready for that, we're not doing that, we need to deliver this other thing here. And then the warehouse people need to accept that. If you model your business aligned with your, if you model your company and your software aligned with your business needs, then you have a very, very transparent structure and people do not get frustrated. The warehouse team knows that they are downstream by design, so what they can do is they can protect themselves by adding an anti-corruption layer. And this is not only technological. You can build something that takes in all the different messages from shopping cart and now translates them to what warehouse software actually understands, but it's also a social thing. You can have a person standing in front of the warehouse team and saying, no, I take the messages, I translate them, and I'll deliver whatever those people need to know right now. So it's always a socio-technical thing that's going back and forth. You do not build software out of a social context and without a social context. But there's also other relationships between bounded contexts. It's not only upstream and downstream all the time. Sometimes delivery and shopping cart, for example, need to work together. They only fail or succeed together. So they have a pairwise relationship. And this should also be reflected in technology as well as in the social structure of the company. So you have two teams that work on those bounded contexts, but those teams need a way to actually talk to each other. They need to have co-location or an easy way to communicate. And the technology should be very open so both can interact and have an interface that they design together. So the organizational and technical boundaries co-evolve. And how they change depends on very, very many factors. It's the vision of the business people that actually changes how my organization is structured. Amazon had shopping cart as their most important domain. Now they try to optimize delivery by having drones fly all around the world. So they changed their core domain. And I'm just assuming, I have no clue what their actual core domain is. But so if vision changes, you actually change your business model, and therefore your software starts to change. But also, if you have something like expert location, you see all the business experts for shopping carts sit in this corner and talk to developers. All the other experts are in a different building. You know where your experts are distributed, so you can easily see, oh, these might be bounded context barriers. And then data cohesion, stuff that changes together, sticks together. So whenever you see, oh, these information need to change together all the time, that might be a very good bounded context. And even from the domain model or the code itself, when I'm coding and it feels awkward because it doesn't really fit, that's a good feedback. My code gives me feedback, so I can push back to the business and say, look, maybe we're structuring this wrong. Maybe there's actually a chance to improve our business model here because code gave me feedback. So basically what we want to have is, we want to have business bounded contexts where we have business people and developers talking to each other in a specific language, and we want to have one team per bounded context. Which does not mean that one team can't do multiple bounded contexts, but it means one bounded context can only be dealt with by one team. If I have two teams that work separately on the same context, they change my mental model without talking to each other, so that doesn't work. If you really feel the need, you need two teams in your one bounded context, you actually have two bounded contexts. Or you have one bigger team. But there's a size barrier. At some point, teams are not really communicating well when they exceed the 20 or 30 people limit at some point. So this is how we want to structure our business, find out what our customers actually need, find out what their contexts are, and then design our teams and our software around those bounded contexts. But how big can a team now get? How do you actually make a lot of people work together? If the distance between the people exceeds the length of a bus, like say 10 meters more or less, so 2 or 3 rooms, those people do not talk to each other anymore. It drops off very, very much. So this is a bad news for distributed teams, though I have seen very, very successful distributed teams, but then it's a very conscious effort and it's hard to do. If you are distributed all around the world, you need to put a lot of effort in actual communication, and still there's a lot of things missing. When you communicate to your peers in the same room, you share so many information that are not specific about the design, the software, whatever. It's just day-to-day talk. You have an idea, you just make an expression when someone says something. There's so much hidden information that gets lost when you're not close together. So if you have your A-list team working on the core domain, co-location, it's not fundamentally required, but it's so good to have that because it improves your model a lot. So why do we want this information, this closeness, so we can talk to each other? It's not only about the information stream of what should be in the model, it's also about emotional safety. If I want to take risks, if I want to express an idea and say, let's change the model, let's challenge the business, I need to feel safe. If developers do not feel safe in actually expressing their idea or challenging their superiors, then you have two effects that happen in companies. You have silence and violence. So, some people turn silent when communication doesn't really work well. They withdraw themselves from their tasks, they avoid confrontation, they avoid taking on challenges, or they just avoid the violent people, and then they mask themselves. They pretend they did some work, they hide behind the appearance of work, or they just say, oh, I'm part of this team and the team did this. So people try to get in a safe zone where they can feel comfortable and be left alone, which is a disaster for them emotionally and for the team and for the software in the end. And other people turn to violence, which is not fist fighting in the company, but there's a lot of different steps of psychological violence. People start to control. It feels good to have power, right? You're sitting in your team and you know if I tell you to do that database thing, you'll do it, because you know who I am. So people tend to crave power and start controlling other people. And they label them. Words have meaning, a lot of that. If I say, oh yeah, the database guy, and I repeat that 20 times a day, Robert is the database guy. Hi, Robert. So he will start believing it, everybody else will start believing it, and at some point he doesn't even have the chance to do other stuff because everybody knows he's a database guy. And then the worst thing is if people start attacking other people. If I feel I have so much power because I'm very up here, and then someone already silenced himself into a corner, I can relieve my stress and anger by just attacking that person, and at that moment you have a very failing team. So you try to avoid that, obviously. So emotional safety is one of the most important things you need in your development team. But it's not only inside of the team, it's also when communicating to the business people. When I'm talking to business people, we need to establish a certain respect for each other. This is a picture from the past, business people talking to programmers, programmers looking into the code, and they figure, oh yeah, you said rule changes. Here is for I equals X, Y, then if then. We became human compilers. We got reduced to translating technology and ideas. And this is how most business people see developers nowadays still. We're changing that slowly, but we trained our business people over 20 years to think in database tables and websites and stuff like that. Now we need to teach them again that we can actually help them with their business problems, and they need to talk to us about their problems, not about what they want to change in the program. So this is already an ideal scenario from the past. Only one hop. Business people talking to developers, developers talking to the code, and back. Usually there's business analysts in between, architects, senior developers, team leads, and a lot of communication hubs. If I find a problem in the code, try to bring it back to the customer and discuss it with 7 hops in between, it will never happen. So, but how do we actually manage to talk to business people? I mean, talking is hard. Business people just don't understand why Java is better than something else. You know, this is not the kind of discussion we can have with them. We need to design a ubiquitous language. Ubiquitous language, also a term from the Domaindriven design book. Ubiquitous language means it's a language that's everywhere in our communication context. It's in the source code, in the documentation, in the tests, as well as in the head of the business people and the developers. Ubiquitous language does not just fall out of a tree. You need to design it. So it's in 3 steps. You have your natural language, be it Afrikaans, English, German, whatever your language is that your business people talk in, and then you have a specific business in that area. So people do delivery, logistics, something like that. There are terms in logistics that have meaning. If I'm organizing a company, I have employees or co-workers or, I don't know, different names for people that I work with. And we need to derive the 3rd step, the ubiquitous language, a term that we can agree on. If some people say co-workers and others say employees, maybe there's meaning in that difference, but maybe it's just ambiguity. People say different words. So if in our contexts we just don't care, we need to define that the ubiquitous language for that role is employee. And let's just use it in source code and documentation so we know what we're talking about. So you design your own ubiquitous language. I brought to you a very nice example of a well-defined ubiquitous language. Put a lot of brain effort in, got some business people, talked to them, and we came up with this. Who of you have written code like this? Come on. The rest of you is lying. Okay, so we have a problem here. This is not a ubiquitous language. This is programmer speak. And we can tell by our privacy manager delegate or the indoor session initializer that there are Weasel words around there that have no meaning at all. These patterns, singleton, delegate, initializer, they are not domain terms. It's just a technical construct of how we implemented it. These Weasel words actually hinder understanding when we read source code. When I'm reading code and I have to not read half of the words because it's just pattern names and they don't add to the business meaning, I put a lot of brain power into trying to decipher where the actual meaning is in my source code. And that's waste. We write code once, but we read it so often to analyze, to optimize, to debug, so it better tells us a story of the business instead of how it got implemented. So how do we figure out what's a Weasel word and what not? Weasel words are empty shells from the business perspective without any meaning. And there are so many of them. There's the party hats. You say, this is my employer or a employer. Who's my? Who am I? You have the Hungarian notation. Why would your variables tell, while you read them, what's a data type? We all have IDEs nowadays. We can hover, we see the data type. Having an int age or a Boolean something, that doesn't add meaning to the business. And also with simplicity, you have a basic customer or the advanced customer. Yeah, what's basic? I'm not a smart guy, so a basic is way more basic to me than to Robert. So this isn't adding any meaning. In worst case, it's also very ambiguous. You have the same thing with all the patterns. If you use Gang of 4 patterns for object-oriented programming, and you have your data transfer object or your interface or your separator pattern or whatever, those things are just how you implemented the solution. And it doesn't stop there, and I can fill the whole screen with it, but we'll not go through all of them. This just gives you a start of how many Weasel words are there. Always, when you write code, think about, is this something that has meaning to the business, or am I just describing how I implemented it? If you really want to say, oh, this is a repository, because the next junior needs to understand this is a repository, add a comment inside of the class or put a marker interface to it or something like that, so that while you read the design of the class, you can actually see what's meant. But in the usage, this is completely useless information. So getting rid of all the Weasel words and super cool. Now we have really good code, right? Nah, still not. So we have a problem. Our privacy manager got better, but the multi-but, that doesn't really make sense. Yeah, we had ambiguity all along. So the multi-but supporter was no technical pattern. It was actually a domain term. But sometimes domain terms have the same word as technical terms. So now we have a mix and we don't even know what we're talking about. If you write business code, your business code should only have business language. And if you write technical implementation, it should only have technical terms. Don't mix them, because otherwise it just gets really, really hard to understand the source code. Instead, talk to business people, and everybody who has a living room is a business person here. So these are our actual business terms. I want to see them in source code. Let me give you a short example of how this can look. This is a bad example. We have a customer repository, and we say get customer by year of birth, date, time, year of birth. I see code like this in almost every code base. Our legacy code has hundreds of thousands of lines of that, and we thought, hey, we're doing a good job. This is really expressive, right? We say customer repository and get by year of birth, yes, cool. But people don't talk like that. I never stand in a room and say, hey, customer repository, get date by year of birth, year, date, time. This is not language. So, we need to get rid of the repository. Repository doesn't add meaning when I read the usage of this. So it's just customers. That's way easier. We need to get rid of the getter. This plague of getters and setters everywhere. This is not what Alan Kay intended when he made Smalltalk and object-oriented programming. Getters and setters are data envy. You take someone's object and then you change it for them and give it the... This is not how that works. Of course, every time you read a variable or something from the database or from memory, you get something. Yeah, that's implicit. You get stuff. But you don't need the getter. Customers by year of birth, and then date, time, year of birth. That's highly redundant. That's just digital by year of birth. Customers by year... Nah, that sounds also weird. We need to get rid of the method name at all. We need a different method name. Come up with a better one. And then the format, the type of the object, date, time. My year of birth is not a date time, because January the 2nd and January the 3rd are the same year of birth, but a different date time. So this is ambiguous. A better design would be, and I made an interface here for the very observant ones, an interface saying customers, and with a method born in year. And I even have another type, it's a year. This is a value type. Internally, it's just an int, it's just a 4-digit int, but it's now type safe. I can't put in a 0, I can't put in a null, I can't put in any illegal values. And if I have a toString method, I can even show you a nice Gregorian calendar toString or whatever. So I have my own value type, and this is type safe, and it transfers meaning to the reader. So instead of writing repo equals customer repo, and then C is repo get by year of birth, new data, and I can now say all customers are my new customers, and turning 50 are all customers born in the year of 1968. This is very, very easy, and it does the same technically. It's just different naming. So if you refactor your code to deeper insight, whenever you understand more about your business, you actually refactor your methods and your class names and add some primitive data types for your domain. Then you have very linguistically, semantically sound code. It's easy to read and to understand what the business actually wants. So, but how did I do this year of 1968? That sounds fancy. This is just a value type, and value types are basically the primitives of your domain. In my domain code, I forbid int, decimal, date, time, string, because there is no int in the real world, and there is no string in the real world. My name is not a string. My name can't be null, it can't be only one sign. It has my name and my family name, so there's multiple rules that need to be checked before the name is actually constructible. So internally, it's just a string maybe, but to make a name, you need a value type. So if you ditch all the primitives and add your own domain primitives, you have very concise code. So value types are simple. I made a struct here called year, and it has a private field. Internally, it's the int. And if I construct a new year, I just say, okay, check the boundaries. If it's okay, if it's legal, It's constructed, otherwise throw an exception. So you can never have an illegal state in your value types. So you never have to do null checks again, because once it comes in, you know it's legal already. But my constructor is not public, because I don't want people to just construct my objects. I made a method that actually builds this type. It's called off. Off gets an int, and it returns a new year. So either it throws an exception, or you get the actual year. So usage here is year of 1968. I designed my class to be readable by usage, not readable in the design phase. So I want to be, when I read my code, always understanding what's happening here. And then I have a toString method. If I say, okay, year toString, it says year of, and then it shows me the number, which is, this is not useful in most cases, but having a toString method with a clear type inside helps you a lot in understanding your test cases and stuff. So we have a ubiquitous language. We sat down with our business people, we modeled, and now what? Our ubiquitous language only has meaning inside of a bounded context. That was kind of the definition of a bounded context, right? So probably a customer in the shopping cart and a customer in the warehouse are different objects. And maybe warehouse doesn't even have a customer. But customer in payment and customer in shopping cart are different objects. So if I change the credit card types, I say now you can also pay with PayPal. I don't want to test my shopping cart again just because I changed the customer class. I have two different classes. And after a while, after talking to the business, you figure out, oh wait, there is actually no customer in payment. You have creditor and debitor and not a customer. So now you can change that without hurting all the other contexts. By not going nomens first, you don't look like, oh, I have customers, so let's make a class and use it everywhere. No, you design your context first. And inside that context, a language. And that language becomes types. Congratulations. You've just discovered domain-driven design. This is what DDD is all about. When you do domain-driven design, it's basically having a bounded context, and inside of that bounded context, business people and programmers, code and documents all speak the same language, and that language is represented in types or in functions. And the goal of Eric Evans, who wrote that book, Domain-Driven Design in 24, was to say, let's tackle complexity in the heart of software. And the complexity that he wanted to tackle was the actual business complexity, not the technical complexity. So a lot of software is accidental complex because we programmers really love the newest JavaScript framework. I want to try out React. I want to try Neo4j, the newest database. It's so cool. But that adds complexity to the code. If there's no business need for that, then you are applying a solution to not a problem. And that's not a good idea. So we try to actually analyze a business and get the whole complexity of the business first and not build a shallow domain model. The domain should be the most important and most complex thing in your software. In that book and many other books around that topic, you find tactical building blocks. And I will not go through them now in detail because it's not important. Many people focus on, oh yeah, we need entities, aggregates, and all those cool things, but that's just implementation details. Whatever helps you to be more semantic in code is the thing you should use. If you do object-oriented programming in Java in 2003 with SQL databases, those building blocks are your friends. Nowadays, you have functional reactive systems, they need totally different building blocks. So whatever building blocks you can find to make your language more expressive in source code, those are the ones you should use in your domain code. Same goes for architecture patterns. Microservices work really well with bounded context, but it's not the same. So whenever people try to come up with technical solutions first, stop them. First think about the strategics. What are my bounded contexts? What's the business problem I'm trying to solve? And when you have a concise model, make a type system or build it in a functional style, and then look for building blocks and architecture to actually implement it. Technology follows the requirements, not the other way around. So my own interpretation of domain-driven design is DDD means discover what is, so find the actual problem and the already applied solutions, then dream what can be. Together with the business people, come up with a model that might work, and then design what shall be. Go into deeper tactical solutions and figure out how this could actually work. Once you have your model in place, you can still discover what is. So now we have a model, but what doesn't work with this model? Do we have other use cases? Do things change over time? So now we need to adapt and do the whole circle again. Of course, not every domain needs the whole strategical and full tactical approach. So to figure out where to actually apply those patterns of good business development, there's a framework called Cynefin. It's a Welsh word, I think. Cynefin says you have 4 different types of complexity. You have the obvious complexity, your known knowns. There's no beer in the crate. Beer's empty. So what you do is you sense it, the beer is empty, and this is categorized a lethal problem. What are we going to do now? And then you respond. Okay, Robert, get another crate, put it in there. Thank you very much. So in an obvious domain where everything is understood and known, you can just delegate your problems. You sense them, you categorize, and then you just delegate or do it yourself. In complicated areas where you have known unknowns, I'm driving my car, it breaks down. I know that I don't know why, but I know how to fix it. Either I myself studied how to repair cars, or I know a person who does. So we sense something, and then we can analyze it. With enough brain power and studying and experience, you can actually just solve the problem by putting your mind at work. And then there's the complex problem fields. Fiscal system, for example. It's not a known unknown. It's not that I can say, oh yeah, look, if you just study hard enough and you come up with a great idea, you can solve the whole fiscal system. Just change this one thing and then everything would work. That's not how that works. In a complex, interconnected world, when you change something, the whole system reacts unexpectedly and chaotic. So the only thing you can do is sense a problem and then make a series of small controlled experiments. Be scientific about it. You probe the system by changing stuff in a certain plan, see what comes out of it, and then adapt to it. Kind of the agile way, right? So, and then there's chaotic. It's when you have unknown unknowns. Something is so chaotic, the zoo opened all the gates and the animals ran through the city. So you can't really say, let's make small controlled experiments. I have a hypothesis. If we just try to apply this, no, this is not how that works then. In a chaotic system, you act first. You just do anything and see what happens, and then you can respond with a thing you sensed. So you have 4 different types of complexity, and domain-driven design, the basics are useful everywhere. If you use something like value types in your domain, that's helpful even in the most obvious problem domain. So because if you read the code, you have types that explain what's happening. But the rest, the whole strategical approach, putting a lot of minds and effort and restructuring your whole company, that you can do in the complicated and complex system. If you're in a chaotic environment, run, go away, I don't know. Try to solve it some way. So, but how do we model business software now? So we figured out we have a complex or complicated problem, and we put all our brains together. We invite the customers, and now we want to model their business problem. Cool. There are 3 easy steps. And whenever someone sells you something in 3 easy steps, don't believe a word they say. But still, there are 3 easy steps, and this is not a recipe. This is just a very abstract idea, therefore it always applies. You extract the right model to be able to help. That's the first thing you need to do. If you don't know what the problem is, how to help, you can't help. Then you put the model that you came up with in semantic code. Make the code understandable. Make it reflect your understanding. And then you have to secure that code from corruption. Because the moment I have a very beautiful domain model in my code, and someone says, oh, but Hibernate is, yeah, now my model gets screwed because it has dependencies on someone took some technology in there. We need to secure ourselves from that corruption. But it's a dance, it's not a march. Even if I'm German, we're not do step 1, step 2, step 3, software done. You start with these 3 steps, and then one by one, whenever something comes up, you dance through the whole step system again. So if I build my model, I secured it, everything's fine, but now the business people tell me, oh, no, actually, we meant it this way. Ah, okay, deeper understanding, cool. So let me extract that model and refine my business case, or just refactor my code because I understood more now. So you do whatever is necessary whenever it's necessary. But that's very abstract. So let's get concrete. Let's extract the right model to be able to help. I invited 2 domain experts, and now I invite you to read about their problem. Okay, so we have a domain here, and what's the first thing we do? As developers, we ask for the names. Give me the names, what do they mean? Dinglebob, Schleem, Fleem, I have no clue. Define me, so I can build my class system, right? No. If you define the class system first, you have a big problem. Because then you have a lot of nouns, maybe even a glossary, but you still have no clue what the meaning of that is. What you should look first in a domain modeling session is things like that. Someone tells you, oh, this is important, because this is where they actually put an emphasis on, so there's something important to them. Let's dive deeper. Okay, because the Philippe has all the Philippe juice. That's not a reason. Someone just gave us a fake reason. It sounds important, but I have no clue what they're talking about. So what I always do is I challenge that by asking a dumb question. Would orange juice suffice? Do we need Philippe juice? Why do we need Philippe juice? The why is a very important question. Also, when you have something like this, you have a time frame. First they do this, then they do that. Challenge the time frame. It might seem dumb, but you have no clue about the domain, so be the dumbest person in the room. What if this happens before that? What if we first repurpose it and then it comes in? If business people look at you like, that makes no sense. Cool, emotional reaction, now I get it, that makes no sense. Good. Sometimes they say, oh yeah, in that case, that would be hard. Cool. Other edge case. Now we figured out there's something valuable, but it's hard to do. So if you challenge the time frame of things, the order of things, you get more insights into what the domain is actually doing. And if you have adjectives like this, you have later or bunch or several or irregular old, always ask if there's another dimension to that. If someone tells you it's black or white, you ask them, isn't there any gray in between? If someone tells you it's gray in between, ask them if it's colorful. So always go one dimension higher of whatever business people tell you and try to challenge what's coming out there. So irregular old, is there an irregular young? I don't know. Maybe they just meant it as a slang, so regular old plumbers, a standard one, or it's actually a specification. This is a regular old one, not an irregular old or regular young. But you don't know, so be the dumbest person and ask the question. Still, we can't really build software now because we don't know what the problem is. We understood a lot about the priorities and how time frame works and the words maybe, but we need to understand the problem first. Software development is a learning process, and it's about learning the needs of the business. And the working software is just a side effect that comes out every now and then to actually represent our actual understanding. But you keep learning and you keep delivering software. The development ends when the software isn't used anymore or the business is dead. And the learning is a bottleneck. So how do we solve that problem? You can't throw a tool at that. You can't say, hey, just use ReSharper and, sorry for the advertisement, but so just use another tool and then you will learn better. Learning is immeasurable and it's not really plannable. So if you have your classical meeting, people opposing each other, that's a very bad situation. If I invite my business people, we sit down at a table, developers and business, and we talk. We don't learn. Nothing smart ever comes out of this. We are opposing each other, so we have a psychological effect, me against you. And the people next to me are my allies. I can whisper like, what an idiot. But the people behind them are opaque. I can't see them at all, so they will not take part in my discussion. We can't really learn as a group once we sit down at a table. What we want to do is not talk, because words vanish. But we also don't want to use UML. So what do? We do event storming. Event storming is a method by Alberto Brandolini, and it's about modeling with the right people in the room an unlimited amount of time and limited amount of time and unlimited modeling space. So you take a paper roll to the wall, everybody gets Post-it and a pen, and everybody can just write down stuff, and the name gives it away. You write down events that happen in the business. Shipment has been made, payment received, payment not received after 3 days, email sent, all those things. You do not write down button clicked, but shopping cart ordered. Business events are what you need in domain events storming. It's a brainstorming technique where everybody can add. So you have all the people in the room, the business people and the technical people, and they all work together to build a model in a timeline from left to right. After a while, 2 to 4 hours usually, you have a very concise model that reflects the understanding of the whole room about the business problem. And you have events and commands and queries you can say, but these are not technical things. The orange stickies are just things that happen in the business. And the blue stickies are just when a user has an intention and wants to do stuff. And you write those things down. So if you have that model, which is a very, very good learning exercise, how do you put it in semantic code? Well, you have this model, and as I said, you have, let's start from the left, you have a command saying order shopping cart, and the yellow one might be a decision. Okay, products available, yes, so the orange one happened, shopping cart ordered. If product's not available, shopping cart not ordered. Fine. how do we get code from there? There's an architecture pattern called CQRS and event sourcing. Who knows of it? Awesome. Yeah, it's growing. So CQRS means command and query responsibility segregation. You do not build a single model for your whole software, or even for your whole bounded context. You build a model for the behavior of your system and another model for the information you want to query. Because an object that has a lot of information but just a few methods doesn't need all those variables in memory all the time. So what you do is you have the real user in the system, and the user has ideas from the real world, and it can say, okay, I want to order this stuff in my shopping cart. So it sends a command to my domain. And then there are the business rules saying, okay, if the shopping cart, if those elements are still available, those products, then I publish an event, shopping cart has been ordered. And then you can project that event back to the domain. Next time someone wants to do stuff, I can use it to rehydrate the state of my domain. So I event source my whole domain. But I can also use those events to project them into any state I want to present on screen. So if I have a read model of all the things I ordered in my shopping cart, I can query the event stream. If I want to see what's still left in stock, I can also just query the event stream. You can just take everything that happened and project your actual state from there. And if you want to say, but what about performance? We'll have a long talk outside on the coffee stand. So I'm willing to go into the whole CQRS and event sourcing system at another time. So, but now we have this model, and how do we secure that from corruption? Now, there's a very bad metaphor. It's called the hexagonal architecture. I hate it because it makes people think about a hexagon and has nothing to do with 6 sides. But the hexagonal architecture is actually about ports and adapters. You do not have a layered architecture where you say, I have UI layer, domain, and then database. What you want is your domain on top. Your domain should have no dependencies whatsoever. And then underneath your domain, there's an application layer that actually holds the code and knows how to load stuff from the database, how to send messages, but it transfers into domain meaning. It only calls semantic methods at the domain, and when the domain gives values back in domain code, the application layer, or the port in this case, knows how to transfer this back to the outside world so that the rest of the world can work with the domain. But why zum Geier, pardon my German, would you actually put all this effort into building software? Why do you actually invite business people and structure your whole company in a different way, and it all seems so daunting? Well, you do it because software becomes what the developers understood, not what the business people meant. So you want your code to be in harmony with the business at all times. Otherwise, you're hurting yourself by adding extra work and a lot of ambiguity. You get a lot of internal trust when you do good domain-driven design, because I can trust my domain code that will never be broken because of technology. It can only break when we define wrong tests or wrong specifications. And we're safe from external influences. I don't care what messaging system we use. My domain changes when the real-world domain changes. And we want to move away from a reward and punishment system and actually motivate people by engaging them. If you give people autonomy to choose what they want to work on and when they want to work on it, they are highly motivated. Money goes only so far. Once the money problem is from the table, people will not work better because I give them more money. That would mean they held back. And who holds back at their work when they actually have enough to live off? So mastery, something people strive for. This is motivational. And domain-driven design gives you mastery not only in software, but in technical things, in business things, and also in facilitation. So wherever your heart is, you can put your energy in and become better, and this is something rewarding. And purpose, of course, you are actually solving a domain problem, so this is kind of a no-brainer. You have purpose because you help people actually with doing their job. But it's not risk-free, there are challenges. So if you try to apply all those things, you have companies with hierarchies. And if you do domain-driven design from the bottom up, middle management try to stick to their power. They will not relieve their power easily. So you need to give people job security, but not role security and stuff like that. That's really hard to do. If you do domain-driven design from the top, you have a lot of old developers, and I mean not by age, but by mindset, old developers saying, we always done it this way, I will not change today. And you have to fight people to become better, and that's not always easy. You want to take them in, you want to be empathic and carry them along, and that's a hard and daunting task sometimes. Also, people try to be perfectionist. I want to do CQRS and event sourcing, so I need to be perfect at it before I start, right? No. We are not domain-driven designers or architects. We're business problem solvers. That's our first and main goal. Everything else is just to help that problem, to help solve that. So don't be perfect, just start with something and make it better than it was before. Otherwise, all those constraints from the outside world are frustrating you. Just take whatever system you're in and see what can I change today, what little step can I do to make it a little better, and then go from there. And take other people with you. So you shape the future, so shape it good. If you start going along this path, you will not only change your code base, but also your culture in your company, the way you do agile, and the architecture of your whole system. This is a list of books I can highly recommend. Better yet, I can recommend these authors because there are multiple books by these authors. So it's Jerry Weinberg or Michael Jackson. Yes, he's a programmer. And it's a different Michael Jackson, though. And yeah, of course, the whole domain-driven design set by Eric Evans and Alberto Brandolini. So you will get the slides later. Check out those books and those authors. It's really amazing stuff they write. Now keep learning, be kind, and go forth and have meaningful lives. Thank you.
Marco, thank you very much for that thought-provoking talk. I'm feeling the need to go and change all my code suddenly. Don't forget Marco's got the book, so don't be shy. Go and chat to Marco. I just need to make a quick announcement about our rate. The speaker's URL, it is case sensitive. Fail, sorry. It's a capital R, and then you'll definitely get to the page, so you can still win that drone with the cool thing. Okay, we're going to go to, what's the name of the room? Serengeti. We're going to go and then go and eat some food and chat for a little bit, and then our session start again, I think, at 10:30. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.